Dear friends, welcome again for this week's video. Today we're going to continue the series started last week about the building of some common FF chains using the NUX Mighty devices. So let's meet in a moment right after the intro. Okay, as we said, we are speaking about effect chain. Again, as last week, we will be using NUX Mighty Air AMP application, the app provided by Tuntori, because this way I can create some presets that we can save. And again, I have my faithful NUX Mighty Air and Mighty Plug Pro, because also today I'm going to provide you some presets that are valid for NUX Mighty Air and so also for NUX Mighty Plug MP-2, because they have the same electronics, they share the same electronics, and also the same preset for NUX Mighty Plug Pro, because this way you will also have it available for NUX Mighty Space, and again, these two devices are sharing the same electronics. That's why I combine them together in the list. The app, as you know, has been developed by Tuntori, one of the friends we have in Facebook group about NUX Mighty Air, and is a fantastic developer. He created an incredible tool that we can use with our NUX Mighty devices. So it is really something helpful to have this one, and in particular, it makes it possible to share the preset. Okay, what is the topic today? Today I'm going to show you a preset that is useful to create that crunch, not high distortion classic rock sound that have been used even in the following decades, not only in the 50s or the 60s, but even in 70s and close to 80s. One thing to remember in the building of this chain is that it is coming from the past where effects were analogic, generally speaking, and there were not so many pedals, and in particular solid state or digital pedals available for that. Okay, I will also let you hear some basic samples just to let you understand what it is possible to hear using. Today I will be using again NUX Mighty Air, NUX Mighty Plug Pro. In particular, the samples you will hear are recorded through the USB of NUX Mighty Air that is connected here to the cable to my Mac, and I will be using an unexpected this guitar that is a TE Telecaster style guitar. It's not a Telecaster. It's not. If you're curious, it is an Harley Benton. So very inexpensive guitar. I paid it really, really few money, and I'm happy with it. But it's not important. I'm not advertising this guitar. And if you are curious about it, well, let's keep it for another day. But the important thing is to let you see that I'm using a single coil guitar, including the bridge side. And some of the samples you will hear, in my opinion, you would not expect that they can be done with a single coil device, because they are a little more modern and a little more, and you can combine them with other kind of humbucker guitars or something like that. But you know, sometimes it's a matter of how you create the effect chain and not only the guitar use. But in particular, of course, for 50s sounds, this is perfect, but it can be useful also for the rest of the samples you're gonna hear. So let's start with some samples. First of all, this way I can give you an idea of what you can obtain in the first place. By the way, so let's start from the beginning with samples of songs that you know very well for sure. Let's start from something that you know for sure. And something that any beginner knows, the one finger song. And of course, the beginner song for excellence. Put me down for a moment my guitar so I can give you an idea on how to build the effect chain. So now let's focus on how to create this effect chain on NUX Mighty Air and Mighty Plug 2. Sorry, because the focus of the camera is not fantastic. Okay, give me a moment. Yeah, you will find the preset I'm going to show you in the description of this video. In particular, you will find a link to my Google Drive folder, and in there you will find the QR code that you can upload into Mighty Amp or even Mighty Amp. So it's possible also to use the official NUX application in order to obtain the same exactly configuration that I'm going to show you. But in any case, I will give you a description step by step, because it's important also to understand how it is built and why some choices have been done from my side, and why it can be useful also for you. You will see that NUX Mighty Air has 7 effect blocks available in the chain, but only 5 of them have been used here, because consider that, as we mentioned before, this kind of effects were used, this kind of plays were used during the 50s and then onward. At the time, everything was analogic. We have very few digital display devices that can be used. Now we have a lot of pedals that we can use to shape our tone as we want, but was not possible at the time. In particular, consider that the distortion was obtained, generally speaking, when, I don't know exactly what happened at the beginning and what was the desired result. In any case, the amplifiers available were basically tube amplifiers, so completely analogic. They had to warm up. They had a lot of limitations compared to the solid state devices we can use now, in particular for home use. And in particular, what was really a characteristic of those devices is that when you pushed the volume at the limit, they saturated. That's common in any kind of electronic. Any amplifier has a saturation limit, and that is why normally it is limited with a compressor or something like that, in order to avoid it to distort. Because when an amplifier is reaching its limit, it's not replicating exactly the wavelength that it receives, the signal that it is in input, but it is cutting it at the top or at the bottom, and the result is a more crunchy sound, the distortion, what we feel as distortion. It is something that players, that guitarists discovered at that time, and it is something that then become something desired. But consider that at the beginning it was an unwanted effect that the amplifier provided. So distortion was a noise, was something wrong when amplifying a guitar. Now it is something that we normally use every single day. At that time, that was the result when pushing the volume at the maximum. So when you needed volume, you pushed at the maximum, and you needed to live with this kind of distortion. But of course, it was not the strong distortion we are using in some modern song to obtain specific shapes, specific tones. At that time, it was a low distortion. That was the basic when the amplifier was saturating. Then, of course, when distortion became something wanted, it was many manufacturers created amplifiers that had a high distortion, that saturated earlier than before, in order to obtain that specific effect that was really welcome in the hard rock that was coming up. But in any case, it was not the first result. So at that time, the distortion was not very hard, and many times it was obtained analogically. How the amplifier saturates compared to the signal it receives when you push its amplification at the maximum, but also when the input signal is very strong. And how you can obtain a strong signal? After a few time, booster were designed, crunch pedals were designed, but in the first place you could obtain just playing your guitar stronger. That's why many guitarists like Malcolm Young said every time, hit those strings, baby, because it was like that you could obtain that satisfying, that powerful sound that created a little distortion that very common in hard rock. But given this, let's show you how to build this chain. First of all, you know that I'm generally using a noise gate because in particular if I'm recording, if I have single coil devices that are prone to hisses, to noises, I prefer to use the noise gate. But you see that this time I didn't want to lose a lot of frequencies, a lot of sound. That's why you see that the threshold is at 21%, 20%. And again, still the sustain, because I don't want a long sustain, I want a sustainer. We want the sound, to be very dry, because that what was available there, and that is the sound that we consider in this kind of music. So low sustain, low threshold. Consider also you can also avoid it. In particular, if you're using humbucker devices, you don't really need it. But of course, I like it and I'm keeping it to use it. So up to you. Let's start from the important things. The effect block. Here we cannot use a lot of effects because they were not available. Normally the guitar went directly into the cabinet. Now we just, sorry, the amplifier, not the cabinet. But now we want to obtain that sound with these devices that are not exactly those cabinets, not used in that specific way. So it's important to get the result we want using our ears, first of all. I tried a lot of effects that are available here also in NUX Mighty Air, and I think that the ST Singer is very good because provide that kind of gain, that kind of powerful sound, in particular helpful when you're using single coil guitars. If you're using a humbucker with high output, probably you will need to reduce the gain from this block, but it's up to you. In any case, you see the volume is around 40%, the gain is about between 70 and 80% to get that crunchy sound, and the filter is below average. 40, 50, 45, more or less. This way, it is possible to obtain a very clear sound, because in this selection I really wanted to favor to focus on clearliness, on details, instead of obtaining high distortion, because that was not the result. We wanted to hear what you are playing and we want to feel that. And in particular in the sample you will hear after this one, you will see that it is really required. It is something really important to do. So nevertheless, I preferred ST Singer. Up to you. You can make any change you want, of course. And with these parameters I just described. For the amplifier, again, for clarity, I prefer to use a class A30, so a Vox simulator. You would expect, if we are speaking about rock, 50s rock, that I used some Fender amplifiers or even some Marshall that came up just a few years ago, a few years later. But this is a simulation, so it's important to pick the best choice to get the better result. In the combination with the effect block, I found that the Vox simulator was more clear and more understandable, so it was easier to distinguish different frequencies, different strings, and I liked it more. So in any case, if you want it, this is okay. You see that all the settings are about on average, so we have gain at 40%, so not so high. We don't want to push the gain in the amplifier. Let's use the effect in case you need more, because it's more more similar to the analogic effect you can obtain from a screamer or something like that. So gain about 40%, level 45, so again on average. Bass and treble are at 50%, so on the 12 exactly, and the cut below 50, about 40 or something like that. And this, in my opinion, gives a good result for our purposes. As impulse response, as cabinet simulation, I prefer the standard one for class A30, so the 8 to 12, again a Vox. They match quite well, in my opinion, again to obtain a good clarity. You will see that for Mighty Plug Pro I used a different combination because it was available. Here it's not possible, but this one is nevertheless quite good. And a little reverb. You may remember that in 50s and 60s the amplifiers had reverb, so it was possible to have this effect, and it's normally necessary to have a light one to obtain that full sound that you are expecting from this kind of songs. Of course, not pushing too much. You see decay 20%, mix 25%, so it's at a quarter, not very strong. And I prefer the spring reverb that was very famous, very popular during the 60s, and in my opinion gives a very good combination with the other effect chain. So given this, I think that you are eager to hear other samples. So we will start again with this. So let's upload again the correct preset, and let's start with some additional plays with different rock songs that came later compared to the previous samples. The most famous one, of course, are well known. Or something a little softer. Or something even more unexpected. I hope you liked it. Of course, please forgive me. You know that I'm not a professional player. I'm more a technician than a guitarist, so I'm focusing on the technical part. But it was important to let you hear what you can obtain with this kind of combination, and I hope that I could make it clear what is possible to obtain when you are shaping correctly your tone. Of course, you may be very famous to understand how to obtain the same result with the Mighty Plug Pro. So let's turn off the Mighty Air. Let's turn on our Mighty Plug Pro. You see it's blinking. Let's return here. So let's start and connect to Mighty Plug Pro. Okay, now let's go to the preset. Again, you will find this preset in the links below, as usual. It is named TJ, like Tutorial Jam, of course, Classic Rock, because that was the name. So let's select it and have a look on how it is built. Before that, I would like to give you a couple of warnings. There are some issues in the charging, the uploading of these presets when you get it into your system, or where we change a lot of presets in your library with Mighty Air Amp. I'm not sure that it is related to the application, probably yes, but no, it is something we will double check with Tuntori. I will double check with Tuntori. In any case, it was remarked by a couple of friends that investigated this issue. Thank you everybody for this help. I could replicate the issue found. It is possible when you switch between different presets that sometimes the system keeps in memory the previous one and upload the new one, but without canceling all the parameters, in particular for blocks, the FF blocks that are not activated at the moment, but were in the previous one. What happens sometimes in this situation is that you get the wrong effect, and that is the minor problem, but sometimes you also obtain a sort of Larsen effect, so a sound that is increasing and increasing until it becomes annoying. It's a matter of logic inside the system, but in particular when there is too many effects. Also, another warning you will find, it's possible that you match this situation, and that is the reason why you see that in the effect chain the noise gate is turned off. We found out that in particular when you activate many effects, or you keep the volume very high in different blocks in this chain, the the device starts hissing. It's the usual, it's something that happens also when you use real pedals, because it is possible to have an increase in amplification or some background noise, of the white noise that is produced by the electronics, and it becomes stronger and stronger. It makes it evident that the system is simulating the analogic very well, in my opinion. This is the confirmation, but in any case, it's very annoying because they become an hissing sound that is very strong when you can hear it in the ear. It's a sort of whistle that it makes it unbearable to keep the headphones on, and it is also related to the volume. If you decrease the volume, it tends to disappear. In particular, it is activated by some specific blocks. If you activate a compressor together with the noise gate and you keep the volume quite high, the outcome is a problem. It's something that you don't really want to get. So please make sure not to activate too many effects and not to have many, and in particular, be careful when you activated the compressor. But you see that in this effect chain, it was inserted. It used very lightly. It somehow replaces the noise gate, I would say, because you see that the level for activation is 28%, so not very high, but not so low. The sustain 22%, we don't want to add sustain. The clipping is 0%, so it's not clipping anymore in any case. So it is used in a very similar way to the noise gate in NUX Mighty Air. You may see that the parameters are almost identical, and that is the purpose, because we don't want a real compression that was not available at the time and is not common in the sounds that you hear. That's why normally in hard rocker you push a lot of strings, chords, because you don't really need compression. There are not so many arpeggios, at least with electric guitars, and you don't need compressor normally because it was not available, so nobody could have the possibility to use it. In any case, here I'm using it as a sort of noise gate that gives also some control on the sound. I like it a lot, so this is my choice. For the effects, again, the ST Singer, with the volume and gain a little higher than compared to NUX Mighty Air, because the important thing is the full outcome, and you will see why this choice was taken. So the volume is somewhere above 50%, so 59. The gain around 70, because it's here that we get the distortion. And the filter about 27%. This is the parameter I chose. Again, the ST Singer has been taken to provide some crunchy sound, but also to keep clarity in the first place. As amplifier, again, I preferred a Vox simulation, but this time, considering that the distortion was coming from the FX block, I picked the A15 instead of the A30 because at my ears it was more clear. And you see that the gain is lower compared to what we did in NUX Mighty Air because it is compensated by the gain provided by the ST Singer. So gain 29%, no more in my opinion. The master, so the level, 47%, the bass and treble again 50%, and the cut again between 40 and 50 as we did for NUX Mighty Air. So nothing particularly new, just a little fine-tune considering this effect block. For IR, here I would provide two possibilities. One is using the 8 to 12 as we did for NUX Mighty Air, and you will obtain a sound that is very similar to what you have heard in the sample. So feel free to pick it from the long list available. So if you prefer, it's here, 8 to 12. But I liked, let me recharge it a lot. I liked a lot the chop tone sample provided in the chop tone firmware available for NUX Mighty Plug Pro. This firmware is available on NUX website, is completely free, is available together with the vanilla one, so you're not gonna pay anything else. And you see it's not a big deal. It just provides two user IRs already uploaded in the system, so they could be made available as separate files that you could upload using the editor, using the software editor in your PC or Mac, but it was included in the firmware probably for royalties matters. Consider that if they provided the full IR instead of including it in the firmware. You could use it in your DAW or any other software. That is something that probably Choptones didn't want, because normally these IRs are paid. Choptones is very famous. It's an Italian company that is recognized as producing the more realistic, the most realistic arguably, of course, the most realistic IRs, professional IRs available in the market. They are not so expensive because the packages are around $20, if I remember correctly, but you have a couple already available just to pick a test. Well, the second one, the bridge, so the simulation of a 412 Marshall cabinet, in my opinion, is fantastic. It's incredibly realistic, well made. So I decided to pick this one, even if it is not perfect, if we are speaking in particular of 50s sound, but to me the combination is wonderful. That's why I prefer this one. But as I said, if you prefer to get a more correct sound, if you want, you can use the Vox Simulator 8-12 again. This is my choice. If you're taking this one, and also for the 8-12 it's the same, let's keep the range of frequencies the wider possible. No cutting here, no filtering. So low cut is at 20 Hz at the minimum, high cut is 20,000, that's the maximum. Because again, we don't want to lose any frequency, because we were in an analogic world where you're not cutting or anything else. Well, in any case, the effect chain so far is providing an outcome that is somehow a little too trebly. So the trebles are a little too strong compared to the rest. To compensate this and obtain a good sound after this chain, so at the end of the combination, I activated an equalizer where you see there is a slope of frequencies. So I'm reducing while the frequency is increasing, so reducing a little the medium compared to the bass, and the treble are even lower, but it is a very soft decrease, just to filter out a little those prominent trebles and reobtain a full spectrum, a full sound. That is the purpose. It is after the chain. This way you can shape exactly the final outcome. Of course, before the reverb, because the reverb is an ambient effect, so it is always at the end. And again, it is a spring reverb at 30% level, the decay 10 to 20%, as we did for NUX Mighty Air, very similar. To my ears, these sounds sound great based on the samples we have been seeing, so I'm happy of the result. Feel free to take the presets from the description. It is, as I said, they are in my Google Drive folder. They are free. Use them, share them, change them. I don't care. It's not a problem. Play with them however you want. The only thing I would like to ask you is, if you are obtaining a good sound, something that you really like, be polite and share it with the rest of the team in the Facebook group, whatever you want, but make it available. It's a good thank you to everybody that is sharing this, and we can unleash the power and be satisfied with our devices in any situation. Given this, thank you again for watching. I hope you liked this video. Please feel free to tell me in the descriptions if there is something that I should correct, something that was not so clear, and also give me suggestion for the new tones you would like to hear. I have a program to develop some sounds that are very familiar, very useful. We started with the clean arpeggios. Now we had the classic rock, that is probably the most widely used combination we can have. And then I would like to go on with other very practical, very widely used tones. But if you are interested in something really specific and you would like to hear something, I don't know, Van Halen sound, something, Paul Gilmore or something like that, just let me know in the comments. I will be more than happy to reply to you and try my best to provide you this kind of outcome. In the meantime, I'm renewing to you the invitation for next week's video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye everybody.